My name is Rachel Collins, and I'm 31 years old. If you ask me what family means, my answer today would be very different than it was 10 years ago. Back then, I would have said it was everything. I would have said family was loyalty, safety, belonging. I would have said no matter how hard life got, family was the net that caught you. But the truth is, sometimes the very people who bring you into the world are the first ones to throw you out of it. I grew up the youngest of three. My brother, Mark, was the golden child, athletic, charming, the one everyone bragged about at church. My sister, Emily, was the social butterfly, the one with friends everywhere and endless invitations to parties. And me? I was the quiet one, the bookworm, the one who spent Saturday nights in my room sketching in a notebook while the rest of the house buzzed with noise and laughter. It wasn't that my parents hated me. It was worse, they barely saw me. I was the afterthought in family photos, the one whose achievements went unnoticed because they didn't shine as brightly as Mark's trophies or Emily's popularity. But everything changed when I was 21. It was my junior year of college, and I'd just declared my major in accounting. I'd always been good with numbers, and while it wasn't glamorous, it was practical. I knew I wanted stability, something solid that wouldn't crumble like the shaky ground I grew up on. That spring, my parents invited me home for what they called a serious conversation. I remember sitting at the long oak dining table, my heart pounding as my mom folded her hands and my dad cleared his throat. "Rachel," my dad said, his voice unusually stern, "we've decided that it's best if you focus on your own life from now on. You don't fit into the direction our family is going." I blinked, confused. What does that mean? My mom's eyes darted to Mark and Emily, who were both sitting smugly on the other side of the table. "It means," she said softly, "you're cut out of the family." The words hit like a thunderclap. My chest tightened, my ears buzzed. I searched their faces for some hint that this was a cruel joke, but all I found was cold resolve. "Why?" My voice cracked. Dad sighed, as if he was tired of carrying me. "You're different, Rachel. You don't bring honor or pride to this family. You question too much. You don't fit in. From this point forward, you're on your own." I turned to Mark and Emily, hoping for backup. Instead, Mark smirked, and Emily avoided my eyes. That night, I packed my things. My parents didn't stop me. They didn't hug me. They didn't even say goodbye. I drove back to campus in tears, my heart shattered into pieces. In one night, I'd gone from daughter to stranger. The years that followed were some of the hardest of my life. With no family to lean on, I worked 2 jobs while finishing school. I cleaned dorm bathrooms in the mornings, tutored math in the afternoons, and studied late into the night. Every time exhaustion threatened to swallow me whole, I heard my father's voice in my head. "You don't fit in. You're cut out." And somehow, that became fuel. If they didn't want me, then I would prove I didn't need them. By 25, I had landed a steady job at a mid-sized accounting firm. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid the bills and gave me health insurance, luxuries I never thought much about as a kid. By 28, I had saved enough to buy a small condo in the city. It wasn't big, but it was mine. Every stick of furniture, every framed picture on the wall was proof that I had built a life from scratch. Meanwhile, I heard about my family through the grapevine, cousins, old neighbors, social media posts that popped up when I least expected. Mark had started a flashy real estate business, driving expensive cars and posting photos from vacations abroad. Emily married a lawyer and lived in a sprawling suburban home with 3 kids. And my parents? They basked in their children's success, posting photos of family barbecues and Christmas dinners as though I had never existed. I won't lie, it hurt. It cut deep to scroll through those pictures and see an empty space where I should have been. But every time the pain surfaced, I reminded myself, I was surviving. Thriving even. I didn't need them. At least, that's what I thought. The first crack appeared when I was 31. I was at work, balancing spreadsheets, when my phone buzzed. The caller ID made my stomach lurch. It was my mother. I almost didn't answer. After 10 years of silence, what could she possibly want? But curiosity, or maybe a sliver of old hope, made me swipe the screen. "Hello." My voice was cautious. "Rachel," she said, her tone unusually sweet. It's been so long. How are you? I gripped the phone tighter. Why are you calling me? She hesitated, then launched into a story about how proud she was of me, how she missed me, how the family wasn't the same without me. Every word felt rehearsed, sticky sweet like syrup. And then came the truth. Your father and I are in a bit of a financial bind, she admitted. The bank requires a cosigner for the loan. We thought maybe you could help. Just a signature. Nothing more. I nearly dropped the phone. After 10 years of silence, 10 years of pretending I didn't exist, they had only reached out because they needed me. In that moment, every memory came flooding back. My father's cold voice. My mother's downcast eyes. Mark's smirk. Emily's silence. The night I packed my bags with shaking hands. The years I spent building a life they never wanted to see. And now, suddenly, I mattered. Not because they loved me. Not because they missed me. But because they needed my signature. I didn't answer right away. I told my mother I needed time to think. But when I hung up, my hands trembled, my chest ached, and one thought burned through me like fire. After all these years, they still didn't see me as family. They only saw me as leverage. I couldn't sleep that night. I lay awake staring at the ceiling, my phone on the nightstand still showing one missed call, Mom. Her voice echoed in my head. We thought, maybe you could help. Just a signature. Just a signature. The words made my stomach twist. For her, it was just ink on paper. For me, it was 10 years of abandonment boiled down into a single transaction. At 3 a.m, I got out of bed and brewed a cup of coffee, the bitter steam curling into my face. My reflection in the dark kitchen window looked tired, haunted. I whispered to myself, why now? Why after all this time? The next day, I found out. They invited me to lunch. Or rather, my mother begged me to meet them. Against my better judgment, I agreed. The restaurant was one of those family-friendly diners with red vinyl booths and laminated menus sticky from syrup. I spotted them in a corner booth, Mom and Dad sitting side by side like a united front. For a second, it felt like being 17 again, coming home late and bracing for a lecture. I slid into the booth across from them. My heart pounded in my chest, but I kept my face neutral. Mom smiled nervously. Rachel, you look wonderful. So grown up. Dad cleared his throat. We appreciate you meeting us. I folded my hands on the table. Why don't you get to the point? Mom glanced at Dad, then leaned forward. The truth is, Mark's business hasn't been doing as well as he says. He took out a loan and we co-signed. Now the bank is calling it in. We need another co-signer to refinance. They won't approve it unless you sign, Rachel. I blinked, stunned. So this isn't even about you? This is about Mark. Dad's jaw tightened. He's your brother. Family supports family. A bitter laugh escaped me. Family supports family? That's rich coming from you. Do you remember the last time you called me family? Because I do. You said, you're cut out of the family. And you meant it. Mom flinched. We were harsh. We regret it. Regret? My voice cracked. You erased me. For 10 years, I was a ghost. And now, suddenly, I'm useful? Dad's face hardened. Don't be dramatic. We didn't erase you. We simply had to focus on the children who... He stopped, realizing too late what he had said. I stared at him, my chest burning. The children who what? Who were easier to brag about. Who fit your mold. Silence hung heavy over the booth. Mom reached for my hand, but I pulled it back. Rachel, she whispered, please. This isn't just about us. If we lose the house, if Mark's business collapses, it'll ruin the whole family. I let out a hollow laugh. The whole family? You mean the family that pretended I didn't exist? The family that celebrated Christmas without me, that cut me out of every photo, every gathering, every memory? That family. Her eyes filled with tears. We made mistakes. No, I said firmly. You made choices. I walked out before dessert, the weight of their stares pressing against my back. Outside, the sunlight felt harsh, almost mocking. I sat in my car for a long time, gripping the steering wheel. My parents' desperation was real, yes, but so was my pain. How do you measure betrayal against obligation? How do you decide if blood outweighs the scars it left behind? That weekend, I drove past my childhood home. It looked smaller than I remembered, the paint chipped, the shutters sagging. A for sale sign leaned crookedly in the yard. My heart ached despite everything. This was the house where I had learned to ride a bike, where I had blown out birthday candles, where I had been told I no longer belonged. As I sat there in my car, staring at the house, my phone buzzed again. This time it was Emily, my sister. I hesitated, then answered. "Rachel," she said brightly, as if we hadn't gone a decade without speaking. "I hear Mom and Dad talk to you. Look, I know they hurt you, but can't you just do this one thing? It'll save all of us." "All of us," I repeated. "Yes," she insisted. "Mark is drowning. His kids need stability. Mom and Dad are too old to handle this stress. You're in the best position to help. Isn't that what family does?" I bit back a laugh. Funny. When I needed family, no one was in position to help me. Emily sighed, her voice sharpening. "Don't hold a grudge, Rachel. You've done well for yourself. This is just money on paper. Stop being selfish." Selfish. The word made my chest burn. For 10 years, I had scraped, fought, and clawed my way into survival with no one lifting a finger to help. And now, because I hesitated to sign away my future for their mistakes, I was selfish? I hung up before I said something I couldn't take back. That night, I pulled out my financial files. I had worked hard to build good credit, to pay down my condo, to finally have a cushion in savings. Signing that loan wouldn't just put my name on paper, it would put everything I had fought for at risk. And for what? For people who had proven over and over again that my worth only existed when they needed me? I sat at my desk until midnight, staring at the loan documents they had emailed me, the cursor blinking in my inbox like a dare. Finally, I closed my laptop. My decision wasn't final, not yet. But for the first time in years, I realized something important. I had the power now. For once, they needed me more than I needed them. The following week felt like living in two worlds. By day, I went through the motions at work, answering emails, running numbers, reviewing client portfolios. My coworkers laughed at jokes in the break room, talked about their weekend plans, their families, their kids. And I smiled when I had to, nodded when it was polite. But inside, my chest was tight, my stomach knotted. By night, I sat in my condo, staring at the loan documents glowing on my laptop screen. The cursor blinked in my inbox like it was mocking me. All it would take was one click, one signature, and the mess wouldn't be mine alone anymore. But every time I thought about it, I saw myself at 21, standing in my parents' dining room as my dad said, "You're cut out of the family." I saw myself packing my things, driving back to campus with tears streaming down my face. I saw birthdays missed, holidays ignored, milestones that passed in silence. 10 years of being invisible. And now, suddenly, I was indispensable. "Melissa, sorry," my sister Emily called again. This time I answered, though my gut told me not to. "Rachel," she started, her voice dripping with sugar. "Listen, I know things were said in the past, but we're family. Can't you just look at the bigger picture?" "The bigger picture?" I repeated. "Emily, the bigger picture is that I was erased. For a decade. And now, because Mark screwed up, I'm suddenly family again." She sighed dramatically. "You always make things about the past. This is about now." "We're drowning, Rachel. You're the only one who can throw us a lifeline." Her words made me feel like I was back in high school, being guilt-tripped into covering for her when she skipped curfew. Always the responsible one. Always the one cleaning up messes. "Emily," I said quietly, "have you thought about what you're asking? If I sign that loan, I'm responsible. If Mark defaults, it's not just him, it's me. My credit. My condo. My future." She was quiet for a beat, then snapped. "So you'd rather see your family lose everything? You'd rather sit in your little condo, safe and smug, while we fall apart?" Something inside me hardened. "Yes," I said firmly. "If the cost of saving you is losing myself, then yes." Emily gasped like I'd slapped her. Wow. You've really changed. No, I whispered. I finally stopped letting you change me. I hung up. The silence after that call was deafening. I sat on the couch, staring at the city lights through my window, my heart pounding. For so long I had believed their narrative that I was the difficult one, the selfish one, the outcast who didn't measure up. But the truth was becoming clearer with every call, every plea, every manipulative word. I wasn't selfish. I was surviving. And they hated me for it. That weekend, I went to visit my cousin Claire. She was one of the few family members who had never turned her back on me completely. She listened, she checked in, she reminded me I wasn't crazy. We sat on her back porch with mugs of coffee, the spring air warm and sweet with blooming lilacs. So they finally reached out, huh? Claire said, raising an eyebrow. Yeah. I let out a bitter laugh. 10 years of silence, and suddenly I'm their golden ticket. Claire sipped her coffee. Don't you see? They don't want you, Rachel. They want what you can give them. Big difference. Her words sank deep. I keep thinking maybe if I help them, they'll see me differently. Maybe they'll finally accept me. I admitted, hating how desperate I sounded. Claire set her mug down firmly. No. If you help them, they'll use you. And the second you stop being useful, they'll toss you aside again. Don't confuse acceptance with convenience. I swallowed hard. She was right. Deep down, I'd known it all along. That night, I dreamed of my childhood home again. I was standing in the kitchen, watching my mom stir soup, hearing my dad laugh at one of Mark's stories. Emily was twirling in a new dress. I stood in the doorway, unnoticed, invisible. And then my dad turned to me, his smile fading, his voice cold. You're cut out of the family. I woke up with tears on my pillow. I realized something in that moment. No signature could rewrite that memory. No loan could buy back the years they had taken from me. A few days later, Mom called again. This time, her voice wasn't sweet. It was desperate. Rachel, please. They're saying we might lose the house. Do you understand what that means? The home you grew up in? The home I grew up in. The home where they told me I didn't belong. The irony stung like salt in an open wound. Mom, I said softly, you already lost me in that house. Losing the building doesn't change that. She started crying, pleading, but I couldn't listen anymore. I hung up. The guilt was heavy, yes. But under it, something stronger was growing, resolve. For the first time in my life, I wasn't chasing their approval. I wasn't bending myself into shapes to fit into their picture. I wasn't begging to belong. I was standing on my own. And whether or not they ever saw it, I knew the truth. I was worth more than a signature. The silence didn't last long. When my mother realized pleading wasn't working, the tone shifted. The next time she called, her voice was clipped sharp. Rachel, this isn't just about you. If you don't sign, we could lose everything. Your brother's business, your father's retirement, even our home. I pinched the bridge of my nose, sitting at my desk at work, her words hissing in my ear through the phone. Mom, I didn't create this mess. Mark did. Dad did. You all made choices. Why is it on me to fix them? Because you can, she snapped. Because you're the one in the position to help. Do you think Mark isn't humiliated enough already? Do you want to see your father on the street? Her words were knives, but they didn't cut the way they once did. I remembered every Christmas I wasn't invited to, every birthday that passed in silence, every time they posted family photos online without me in them. I steadied my voice. You should have thought about that before you cut me out. She inhaled sharply, then hung up. 2 days later, Emily showed up at my condo. I opened the door to find her standing there in a beige trench coat, her blonde hair perfectly styled, a smile plastered on her face. Rachel, she said, her voice overly sweet. Can I come in? Against my better judgment, I let her. She walked around my condo slowly, taking in the neat furniture, the art on the walls, the small but cozy living room. You've done well for yourself, she said finally. Really well. I crossed my arms. What do you want, Emily? She turned, her hazel eyes glinting. Look, I get it. You're angry. You have every right. But let's not pretend this is about principle. This is about power. For once, you're the one holding the cards, and you're enjoying watching us sweat. Her bluntness startled me. You think this is fun for me? She shrugged. Maybe not fun, but satisfying. She stepped closer. Rachel, I know you want to belong. I know you still want to be part of the family, even if you don't admit it. Sign the loan and things can go back to how they were. Holidays, birthdays, dinners. You'll be included again. We can move forward. For a second, her words almost pulled me in. The little girl inside me, still aching for a seat at that table, wanted to believe her. But then I remembered Claire's voice. Don't confuse acceptance with convenience. I laughed bitterly. Emily, you don't want me. You want my signature. Once you have it, I'll disappear again. Her smile faltered. That's not true. It's exactly true. I pointed to the door. You can leave now. Her face hardened, the sweetness evaporating. You'll regret this, Rachel. Don't think the rest of the family won't see you for what you are, a selfish brat. I opened the door wider. Better a selfish brat than a fool. She stormed out without another word. The fallout came fast. A week later, I got an email from a distant cousin. Then another. Both carefully worded but laced with judgment. I heard about the situation with your parents. I hope you reconsider. Family is everything. Everything. The word made me laugh and ache at the same time. Where were these voices when I spent Christmas alone? When I worked double shifts to pay tuition? When I blew out birthday candles in silence? Now, suddenly, family was everything because they needed me. That weekend, I went for a long walk through the city. Spring was in full bloom, the sidewalks lined with tulips and cherry blossoms, couples holding hands, kids skipping ahead of their parents. I watched them with a kind of wistful envy. What would it have been like to have that kind of unconditional love, the kind that doesn't vanish when you fail to perform? I found myself wandering past the bank. I stood outside, staring at the glass doors, the reflection of my own face staring back at me. I thought about walking in, about signing, about what it would mean. But then I thought about everything I had built, the credit I had worked tirelessly to protect, the condo that was mine alone, the life carved from resilience instead of inheritance. And I realized something. Signing wouldn't bring me closer to them. It would chain me back to the very people who had abandoned me. I walked away. That night, Mark finally called. Rachel, he said flatly. You're making this harder than it needs to be. I bristled. Excuse me? You know this isn't really about you, he continued. It's about the family. About keeping us afloat. You've always been different. But this is your chance to prove you're one of us. My chest tightened. Prove? I have nothing to prove to you, Mark. For 10 years, I wasn't even worth a phone call. And now I'm supposed to risk everything to fix your mistakes. He chuckled bitterly. You've always been dramatic. This isn't about mistakes, it's about survival. And if you don't step up, you'll be the one responsible when Mom and Dad lose everything. His words dripped with manipulation. Guilt, shame, blame. All weapons I knew too well. But this time, they didn't pierce. Mark, I said quietly, I'm not responsible for saving you from yourself. Silence crackled on the line. Then he spat. Don't expect us to forgive you. I smiled grimly. I stopped waiting for your forgiveness a long time ago. I hung up. That night, I lay awake again, but it was different. My chest still ached, yes, but beneath it was something steadier, something like resolve. For so long, I had begged for their approval, bent under the weight of their judgment. But now, for the first time, I realized the balance had shifted. They needed me. I didn't need them. And maybe, just maybe, it was time to stop playing their game altogether. The calls slowed down after I hung up on Mark, but the silence that followed wasn't peaceful. It was heavy, like the calm before a storm. Every time my phone buzzed, I flinched, half expecting another guilt-laced message or manipulative plea. For the first time in my life, though, I didn't answer out of fear. I chose silence. And in that silence, I began to notice something I hadn't before: freedom. I could breathe without their voices telling me who I was. I could look in the mirror and see more than the daughter who didn't fit. I was Rachel Collins, 31, a woman who had survived abandonment and still built a life worth living. But my family wasn't ready to let me walk away. It started with whispers. Claire, my cousin, called me one afternoon. "Rachel," she said cautiously, "I think you should know what's being said." My stomach sank. "What now?" She hesitated. "Your parents, they've been telling people you refused to help them when they were in desperate need. That you're selfish. That money has hardened you." I pressed my hand against my chest, feeling the familiar ache of betrayal. "Of course they are. They always rewrite the story." Claire's voice softened. "I told them it wasn't fair, that they don't know the whole truth. But you should be prepared. They're painting you as the villain." Villain. The word stung, but it also lit a fire in me. For years, I had been invisible. Now that I refused to play by their rules, suddenly I was the villain. It wasn't about who I was. It was about the fact that I wasn't useful anymore. "Let them talk," I said finally, my voice steadier than I felt. "I'm done defending myself." That weekend, I went grocery shopping. As I pushed my cart down the aisle, I caught sight of two women from the old neighborhood, family friends I hadn't seen in years. They whispered, glanced at me, and quickly turned away. My chest tightened, but I forced myself to keep walking. I didn't owe them my story. Still, as I loaded bags into my car, tears pricked my eyes. It hurt, knowing that no matter what I did, I'd be cast as the outsider. First invisible, now the villain. But maybe that was okay. Maybe being their villain was better than being their pawn. On Monday, the fallout escalated. I was at work when my boss called me into his office. He gestured for me to sit, his expression unreadable. "Rachel," he said carefully, "I got a call over the weekend from someone claiming to be your family. They suggested you're unreliable, that you might not be trustworthy with money." My heart plummeted.
"What?"
He leaned back, steepling his fingers. "I don't believe it, of course. Your record here speaks for itself. But I thought you should know, someone's trying to damage your reputation." My hands trembled in my lap. It was them. My family. He studied me for a moment, then nodded. "I figured as much. Don't worry. I've seen your work. I trust you." Relief flooded me, but anger burned hotter. They hadn't just tried to manipulate me. They had tried to sabotage me. I walked out of his office with my head high, but inside, something had shifted. I wasn't just defending myself anymore. I was preparing for war. That evening, I went for a long walk. The city buzzed with life around me. Couples laughing, kids chasing pigeons, street musicians playing violins on the corner. I watched them with a strange sense of detachment, as though I was on the outside of a glass wall. And then it hit me. That's what my family had always done, kept me outside the glass. But now, for the first time, I was breaking it. Not to get in, but to get out. I didn't want to be part of their picture anymore. Later that week, Mom called again. Against my better judgment, I answered.
Her voice was cold this time.
"Rachel, I don't understand you. We raised you. We gave you everything. And now you're punishing us when we need you most." I laughed bitterly. "You gave me everything? You gave me nothing but rejection. Do you remember the words, Mom? You're cut out of the family. I've lived with those words for 10 years. And now, suddenly, you need me?" Her voice cracked. "People make mistakes." "Yes," I said firmly. "And people live with them." There was silence on the line, broken only by her shaky breathing. Finally, she whispered, "You'll regret this, Rachel. When we lose everything, you'll regret it." I hung up before she could say more. That night, I sat on my balcony with a glass of wine, the city lights glowing like stars below me. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like the powerless daughter begging to belong. I felt like a woman who had survived the worst they could throw at me. And I realized something profound. I didn't regret refusing them. I regretted every year I spent wishing they would want me. The next morning, I called Claire. "I need to tell you something," I said. "I'm not signing. I'm not helping them. And if that makes me the villain in their story, so be it." Claire's voice was steady.
"Good.
Because villains in their story are often the heroes in their own." Her words made me smile through my tears. For once, I wasn't ashamed of being different. I was proud of it. The storm wasn't over. I knew there would be more calls, more gossip, more attempts to drag me back into their web. But for the first time, I wasn't afraid, because I finally understood the truth. They had cut me out of the family, but in doing so, they had freed me to create my own. And I wasn't going to sign that away. The collapse began quietly, like a slow leak in a tire you don't notice until the car starts pulling sideways. It was a Thursday afternoon when Claire called me, her voice brimming with unease. "Rachel, I don't want to alarm you, but I heard Mark's business has defaulted on one of the loans. People are talking. It's bad." My heart skipped, but not from fear. From recognition. The dominoes were finally falling. That evening, I sat in my condo staring at the city lights, sipping tea. I thought about how my parents had begged, how Emily had tried to guilt me, how Mark had mocked me. And now, here it was, the consequence they swore would never come. For once, it wasn't me carrying the burden. 2 weeks later, I drove past my childhood home. The for sale sign I'd seen leaning in the yard before was now bright and new, the word foreclosure printed across the bottom in bold red letters. I parked across the street, staring at the house that had shaped me and scarred me in equal measure. The shutters hung crooked, the paint chipped. It looked tired, like a face that had smiled too long and finally cracked. I whispered into the quiet car, "You chose this, not me." It was surreal, watching the physical symbol of my family's pride crumble. And for the first time, I felt no urge to fix it. The gossip reached me soon after. At the grocery store, 2 women from my parents' church whispered loudly in the produce section. Such a shame. All that success and now gone. I kept my head high, my basket filled with apples, lettuce, spread. When I passed them, they stopped whispering. One of them gave me a pitying smile, like I was supposed to feel embarrassed by association. But I didn't. Their fall wasn't mine. For years, I had carried their rejection like a secret shame. Now I realized the truth. Shame belonged to the ones who built their lives on arrogance, not the one who survived their scorn. Then came the call I'd been half dreading, half expecting. It was my father. His voice was gravelly, older somehow. "Rachel." I held my breath. "Dad." There was a long pause, like he was chewing on pride, and it tasted bitter. "The house, it's gone. Mark's business is finished. Emily's husband won't answer my calls. Your mother is beside herself." I swallowed hard. "I'm sorry to hear that." He exhaled, a shaky sound. "You could have helped. You still can. The bank might." "No," I said firmly. "I'm not signing anything." His voice sharpened. "So, you're just going to watch your family fall apart?" I closed my eyes. "You cut me out of the family 10 years ago. Remember? This isn't my fault to stop." The line went silent. For once, my father, the man whose voice had always been law, had no reply. In the days that followed, I felt something shift inside me. For so long, I'd been defined by their rejection, trapped in the shadow of their judgment. But now, I wasn't their scapegoat. I wasn't their forgotten child. I was the one who had walked away and survived. The power wasn't theirs anymore. It was mine. One evening, Claire invited me over. She had a fire going in her backyard, the wood crackling, the air filled with the scent of smoke. We sat with mugs of cocoa, the night alive with crickets. "They're unraveling," she said softly. "Everyone sees it now. The family that looked perfect from the outside is crumbling from the inside. And you," she smiled. "You're the one who stood your ground." I stared into the flames, feeling the warmth seep into me. Sometimes I wonder if that makes me cruel. Claire shook her head. "Cruel?
No.
It makes you strong. You didn't cause this, Rachel. You just refused to carry it. There's a difference." Her words sank deep. For years, I had blurred those lines, thinking saying no meant betrayal, thinking survival meant selfishness. But now I saw the truth. I wasn't cruel. I was free. Later that night, I stood on my balcony, the city glowing beneath me. I thought about the girl I had been, The one who cried in her dorm room, who begged for a phone call that never came, who spent birthdays alone while her family laughed without her. And I thought about the woman I was now, stronger, scarred, but whole. I whispered into the night, "You didn't break me." For the first time, I believed it. The official end came on a gray morning in early autumn. I was pouring coffee when Claire texted me a photo. My parents' house, the one I had once been told I no longer belonged in, stripped bare. Curtains gone. Lawn overgrown. A foreclosure notice nailed to the front door. I stared at the screen for a long time, the steam from my coffee curling into the air like a ghost. The house wasn't just wood and paint. It was the symbol of everything my parents had built their pride on, the family dinners I was excluded from, the reunions I was cut out of, the laughter that never included my name. And now it stood empty, abandoned. For the first time in years, I didn't feel the ache of exclusion. I felt the quiet power of release. A week later, my mother called. Her voice was thin, brittle, like glass ready to shatter. "Rachel," she whispered, "we lost everything. Your father is broken. Mark won't speak to us. Emily has her own problems. We have no one left." I leaned against the counter, my fingers tightening around the phone. "You still have me," I said softly, "but not in the way you think." She sniffled. "What do you mean?" I closed my eyes. "I won't sign loans. I won't rescue you from choices you made. But I won't disappear either. I've carried your rejection for too long. I'm not carrying your debt, too." There was silence on the line, then a quiet sob. "I don't know how we got here." I almost said, "because you cut me out." But I didn't. Some truths are too heavy to throw at a broken person. Instead, I said, "You made your choices. And now I've made mine." For days after, I felt strange, lighter and heavier at the same time. Lighter because I had spoken the truth. Heavier because closure isn't always sweet. Sometimes it tastes like ashes. But closure, I realized, isn't about fixing the past. It's about deciding it no longer controls your future. One evening, I walked through a quiet park at sunset. Families gathered on picnic blankets. Kids chased each other through the grass. Couples strolled hand in hand. I watched them without envy for once. Not every family was like mine. Not every bond was built on control. And maybe, just maybe, I could create something different for myself. As I sat on a bench, the sky painted in gold and pink, I pulled out my journal. I wrote 3 words in bold letters across the page. "I choose me." Months later, I heard through Claire that my parents had rented a small apartment. Humble, nothing like the house they'd once bragged about. Mark had moved to another state, chasing some new business venture. Emily stayed quiet, embarrassed by the fallout. And me? I was still in my condo, still working, still living. But for the first time, I wasn't defined by their silence or their scorn. I was defined by my own choices. The final test came one chilly November night. I got a letter in the mail, handwritten in my father's stern script. My hands shook as I opened it. It wasn't long. Just a few lines. "Rachel, you were right. We were wrong. I don't know if we can fix what we broke, but I needed you to know this. You were always part of the family, even when we were too proud to admit it." I read it 3 times, tears blurring the words. A part of me wanted to clutch it to my chest and believe it erased everything. Another part of me knew better. Words on paper didn't heal 10 years of wounds. But they mattered. They were acknowledgement, however late. And maybe that was enough. That night, I stood on my balcony, the cold air biting my cheeks, the city lights glittering like 1,000 chances. I thought about the girl I had been, the one who cried when she was cut out of the family. And I thought about the woman I was now, the one who stood firm when they begged for her signature, the one who chose herself. I whispered into the night, "You can't cut me out anymore, because I belong to myself." And in that moment, I felt free.